You can tell a lot about a company by how it treats the quiet people, the ones who don't play golf with executives or fill the break room with noise. I'd been one of those people for 8 years, steady, invisible, the kind of guy who fixed what broke without being asked. My name's Evan Miller, and I ran logistics for a mid-sized construction firm in Charlotte. We built high-end developments, and every screw, bolt, and invoice crossed my desk before reaching a site. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I liked the rhythm. Morning deliveries, spreadsheets, late afternoon calls with suppliers. Routine kept me sane after my divorce. My boss, Tom Beckett, was a different breed. He wore confidence like cologne. Too heavy, meant to cover something else. He'd been with the company half the time I had, but his smile and golf handicap moved him up faster. People said he was a vision guy, which usually meant someone else stayed late cleaning up the vision's mess. That someone was usually me. The budget cuts started small. Travel reimbursements delayed, overtime frozen. By spring, I noticed expense reports that didn't line up. Client dinners in cities we didn't have projects in. Hotel charges under the consulting category. I flagged them quietly, assuming maybe accounting had miscoded something. Then Tom called me into his glass-walled office one Thursday afternoon. "Evan, we need to tighten things, Bichan," he said, leaning back, hands behind his head. "Corporate wants lean operations this quarter." He smiled like it was a favor. I nodded, pretending not to notice the fresh tan lines around his wrist where a watch usually sat. "Sure. What's being cut?" "Your department," he said. "We'll reduce discretionary spend by 15%. That meant slashing field bonuses and delaying safety gear upgrades. The same upgrades I'd argued for after a guy sliced his palm open last month. "Tom, that's—" He raised a hand. "It's temporary. Just until we stabilize. You're good at making things work." He meant, "You'll cover for me." That night I stayed late, double-checking the new budget sheet. His own travel line had increased by nearly the same percentage mine had dropped. Coincidence? Maybe, but my gut didn't believe in coincidences anymore. The next week, a rumor floated through the office like cheap perfume. Tom had been mentoring one of the new marketing consultants, Lena Hart. She was smart, ambitious, always laughing too loudly at his jokes. I didn't think much of it until I saw a corporate card receipt she'd mistakenly copied me on, a dinner for two at an upscale restaurant in Atlanta. The memo line read vendor relations. We didn't have vendors in Atlanta. I sat there staring at the receipt, the numbers sharp in the monitor's glow, and thought about the safety harnesses I couldn't order because of those cuts. I told myself to stay out of it. Office politics chew up guys like me. But every time I signed off on a delayed purchase, that dinner total came back to me. By June, the cracks were showing. Field supervisors were complaining. Equipment requests were bouncing. I started compiling every discrepancy, dates, receipts, approval chains, not because I had a plan, but because habits die hard. Documentation was my way of breathing. One Friday morning, HR sent a company-wide reminder about ethical expense reporting. Everyone joked about it, but I noticed Tom's jaw tighten when he read it. Later, he stopped by my desk, resting a hand on the partition like a friendly weight. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Busy," I answered. "Good. Keep it that way. Corporate likes quiet guys." He meant, "Don't dig." When he left, I opened my personal notebook, the one I kept locked in my drawer, and wrote down the time, his words, and the faint smell of his cologne lingering over my desk. Documentation, always. The breaking point came during our quarterly review. We were in the conference room, fluorescent lights buzzing, everyone pretending not to look exhausted. Tom presented slides about cost optimization and strategic reallocation. Then the numbers hit the screen. My department's budget was slashed again, another 10%. The same week I saw a new hotel charge on his report. Same vendor relations tag, same initials, LH. I didn't speak. I just watched him grin through the presentation, pointing at graphs I'd made. When it ended, people clapped like trained seals. Afterward, Lena stopped by the break room. "Rough quarter?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. "You could say that," I said. She smiled, lipstick perfect. "Tom says you're a lifesaver." "Yeah," I said. "He says that a lot." She didn't notice the edge in my tone, or maybe she did and didn't care. That night, I drove home with the windows down, summer air thick with cut grass and diesel. I kept replaying that meeting in my head. The laughter, the applause, the way Tom avoided eye contact when I caught his reflection in the conference glass. The idea came quietly. Not revenge, not yet, just clarity. If he was using company money for his affair, there was a record. And if there was a record, someone in accounting could trace it, if they knew where to look. I already had every breadcrumb in my private file. All I needed was the right nudge. 2 weeks later, corporate announced a random audit. Tom called a closed-door meeting. "Everything clean?" he asked. "Should be," I said. He watched me too long before nodding. "Good, because if anything's off, it rolls downhill." He smiled like he'd already decided where downhill ended. When he left, I stared at the screensaver on my monitor, our company logo fading in and out, and thought about that first email, the one that cut my budget. I still had it saved. I opened the folder labeled Q2 Adjustments. Inside sat every file I'd collected, expense reports, time-stamped emails, Lena's receipts, a quiet mosaic of betrayal, hiding in plain sight. That weekend, I took my laptop to the small coffee shop near my apartment. I ordered black coffee, no sugar, sat by the window, and started drafting an email. No accusations, no emotion, just facts. To accounting deputy. Subject: expense reconciliation, anomalies Q2. Attached: the spreadsheet. In the body, I wrote one line. Cross-referencing these charges with approved vendors may reveal discrepancies. I didn't sign my name, but I didn't hide it either. The sender ID read evan.miller@beckettprojects.com. I hovered over send. My hand shook slightly, not from guilt, but from the weight of it. Then I clicked. Monday came with silence. Tom acted normal, maybe too normal. Meetings, coffee, small jokes. I tried to match his tone, but inside I felt a low hum, like standing near power lines. By Wednesday, finance requested updated logs from all managers. Tom's email came an hour later. "Team, please verify your expenses for accuracy. Quick turnaround appreciated." He CC'd me, of course. I opened the sheet, staring at his numbers. Same pattern, same tags, same initials. That night, as I was shutting down my computer, he appeared at my doorway. "Big audit coming," he said. "You'll help, right? Always do." He smiled. "That's why I trust you, Evan." He didn't know that trust had already left the room days ago. 3 days later, accounting called an emergency meeting. The finance director, Renee Campos, looked pale but steady. "Some discrepancies surfaced in the Q2 review," she said carefully. "We're escalating to corporate compliance." Tom shifted in his chair. "Define discrepancies." She met his eyes. "Unauthorized charges, travel, lodging, entertainment, all coded under your approval chain." The room went silent except for the hum of the projector fan. He laughed. "That's impossible. Must be a system error." Renee didn't smile. "We'll verify that." He looked around, seeking an ally. None of us met his gaze. After the meeting, he cornered me near the elevator. "You wouldn't know anything about this, would you?" "About what?" I asked. He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Don't play dumb. Someone sent them my expense logs. Who else even has access?" I shrugged. Could be anyone, Tom. You're the one who signs them. His jaw worked like he was grinding stone. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, but maybe I'm just keeping records clean. The elevator door opened. I stepped inside. His reflection caught mine in the mirrored wall, eyes burning. The next week was chaos. HR interviews, compliance checks, whispered conversations in hallways. Lena stopped showing up altogether. Her name quietly disappeared from the directory by Friday. Tom avoided me. When we crossed paths, his smile was brittle, his jokes forced. I heard he'd been asked to take administrative leave pending investigation. No one said why out loud, but everyone knew. That Friday afternoon, corporate sent a memo. Effective immediately, interim management will assume oversight of the logistics department. Appreciation to Evan Miller for maintaining operational continuity during this transition. It wasn't glory, but it was acknowledgement. That night, I walked out to the parking lot alone. The air smelled like rain and asphalt. I leaned against my car, watching the building lights flicker off one by one. For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. Still, I couldn't shake one thought. Justice rarely feels like victory. It just feels quieter. I started the engine, headlights cutting through the wet pavement, and drove home knowing that silence for once was on my side. We sat at my kitchen table. The smell of burnt coffee still lingered. I'd been up late reading company policy, trying to understand what happens after someone like Tom gets caught. Perez laid out a small folder. This is about the recent expense audit, he said. You were listed as a verifying party on several reports. I nodded. I reviewed them, didn't approve them. He took notes, calm and methodical. Can you walk me through your process? So I did. Every boring procedural step, from data entry to submission to the way Tom's approvals bypassed the usual checks. I thought I was being helpful, but his pen never stopped moving. Did you personally forward the files to accounting? There it was. I looked at him, steady. I did. He didn't react, just nodded. Why? Because I thought they'd find something wrong, I said. And they did. He closed his notebook softly. You understand that internal disclosures have to go through compliance channels, not directly to accounting? I understand that now, I said. He studied me for a long second, then leaned back. Mr. Miller, you're not in trouble, but I need to be clear. You stirred something that's going to rattle upstairs. I exhaled. Tom's the one who crossed lines. Perez nodded slowly. Yes, but people who expose things often get caught in the recoil. By Monday, the office was split in two, the ones who whispered and the ones who stared. Tom's office was still locked, his nameplate removed. HR was transitioning responsibilities, which was corporate for bearing fallout. At lunch, my coworker Jake, a project coordinator, slid into the seat across from me. Heard compliance came to your house, he said quietly. I didn't answer. He smirked. Relax, man. Word is they're making you interim manager. Who said that? Renee from finance. She said corporate wants stability. Stability. I'd never been the kind of guy they noticed, but now suddenly, I was the one holding the glue. That afternoon, I got an internal memo. Subject: Temporary departmental oversight from HR operations to Evan Miller. It was official. I was now acting department head until further notice. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The office around me buzzed with forced normalcy. Printers humming, phones ringing, people pretending to focus. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing on a trap door that hadn't opened yet. The first week was survival. I buried myself in spreadsheets, answered every email, kept everything transparent. I even started using the company card for minor purchases, coffee runs, safety gear, just to leave clean paper trails. But people looked at me differently. Some respectful, some wary. When you expose a boss, even a guilty one, you don't just win. You change the temperature of every room you walk into. Renee stopped by one evening when most of the floor had cleared out. "You okay?" she asked. "Define okay." She half smiled. "Compliance wants to do follow-up interviews. They're not after you. They just want context." "Context," I repeated. "Right." She hesitated before speaking again. "You did the right thing, Evan, but right doesn't always mean safe." Then she left, her heels clicking down the hall like punctuation marks I couldn't erase. By the end of that month, corporate announced a restructuring. Departments merged, titles shifted. A few people were quietly let go, mostly those tied too closely to Tom's circle. Rumor said he'd negotiated a mutual separation. No lawsuit, no formal termination. Just an agreement and a non-disclosure clause. He'd land somewhere else. Guys like him always did. But Lena, that was different. One afternoon, I saw her name pop up in the visitor log. She'd come to pick up personal items. I stayed in my office, hoping she'd avoid mine. She didn't. She knocked softly, peeking in. "Hey, stranger." I looked up from my desk. "You shouldn't be here unsupervised." She gave a small laugh. "Relax. HR knows I'm getting my things." Her tone was light, but her eyes were tired. "You really sent those files?" "I did." A pause stretched between us, filled with unspoken things. "I didn't know," she said finally. "About the money." "Didn't you?" She frowned. "You think I'm that stupid?" I wanted to believe her, but I'd seen the receipts, the handwritten notes on them, her initials next to his. "I think you got caught in his orbit," I said, "and it burned you too." She looked at me for a long second, then nodded, quiet. "He said you were harmless." "I used to be." She left without another word. The next few weeks felt like living in a fog. On the surface, life was calm, routine even, but every time I got an internal call, I felt that spark of dread, like someone had found a reason to make this my fault. Then one morning, Perez from compliance showed up again. No suit this time, just a polo shirt and a USB drive. "Got the final audit report done," he said. "You'll want to see this." He plugged it into my computer and opened a summary. Unauthorized spending totaling over $82,000, traced directly to Tom's approvals. Most transactions linked to consultant travel and accommodation. The report ended with one line in bold: "Recommendation: further action pending executive review." I scrolled down and stopped at the last page, my name listed as assisting witness. Perez sighed. "You're in the clear, officially." I nodded, not trusting words yet. He turned to leave but paused at the door. "You ever think about moving up permanently? Into Tom's role?" He shrugged. "Someone has to, and you already know where the bodies are buried." That night, I sat on my balcony with a beer, rain tapping against the railing. The city below glowed in the yellow haze, traffic humming like a distant tide. I thought about how easy it had been for Tom to manipulate numbers, people, trust. How simple betrayal becomes when hidden behind spreadsheets and signatures. I also thought about what Perez said. Move up. Did I want that? Or had this whole mess just shown me what power costs? I didn't know yet. Then the next morning, an email landed in my inbox, marked urgent, from Anonymous. Subject: he's back. The body contained a single line. Check the new vendor list. Name looks familiar. My stomach tightened. I opened the shared vendor file. A new subcontractor had been added. LH Consulting LLC, Lena Hart. The vendor address was a post office box in Atlanta. By noon, I was in Renee's office. She looked up from her monitor as I walked in. "Tell me you saw this," I said, sliding the printed sheet across her desk. Her expression froze. "That wasn't approved through my team. It's already listed in active vendors." She grabbed her phone, calling compliance. Perez, it's Campos. We've got a problem. I waited while she explained. Her tone stayed calm, but her eyes darted toward me now and then, part gratitude, part disbelief that this was happening again. When she hung up, she exhaled. They'll trace it, but someone high up had to greenlight this. Meaning, someone who wanted the mess buried. By evening, corporate servers went into lockdown for scheduled maintenance. I knew what that really meant. Files were being scrubbed. Pears called from a private line. You didn't hear this from me, he said, but Tom might be consulting through intermediaries. They're testing if anyone notices. So this is a loyalty test, I said. Pretty much, and you just failed it. In the best way. The following Monday, the vendor was gone from the system. Quietly deleted. No emails. No explanations. But that night, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No address, no stamp, just my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a folded receipt. LH Consulting, $4,200 for project coordination. And underneath, one sentence in Tom's handwriting. You should have stayed quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that paper until dawn. Part of me wanted to march it to the police. Part of me wanted to burn it. Instead, I scanned it, encrypted the file, and stored it with the rest of my records. Evidence of a man who still thought he owned the rules. The next morning, I sent one message to Perez. Subject, he's trying again. Attachment, receipt scan PDF. Then I deleted the physical copy and went to work like nothing happened. Weeks passed. No word. Life drifted back toward normal, or something pretending to be. Then, one Thursday afternoon, Perez called. Corporate terminated all third-party vendor renewals linked to the Atlanta region. Quiet internal sweep. You can exhale now. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. And Tom? Last I heard, he's under federal review for misappropriation of funds. Some contracts cross state lines. So that was it. The end of the man who thought budgets were personal toys. Perez paused. You played it clean, Evan. Don't lose that. I thanked him and hung up, though clean didn't feel right. Nothing about this felt clean. That evening, I walked the empty corridors before locking up. The office smelled faintly of toner and lemon polish. My reflection in the glass looked older, more tired, but steadier somehow. I stopped by Tom's old office. The blinds were half drawn, desk cleared except for one pen left behind. It wasn't heavy, just honest. I left it there. Some ghosts don't need burying. They just need forgetting. Outside, rain had started again. I stepped into it, letting the cold soak through my shirt. Sometimes justice doesn't thunder. It drips, one drop at a time, until you finally realize the storm's been yours all along. By July, the office had settled into a rhythm again. New management banners hung on the walls. Integrity, transparency, teamwork. The kind of words that sounded expensive, but didn't change anyone's paychecks. I was still acting department head, though HR kept calling it temporary. They said corporate was reviewing long-term leadership options, which meant I was doing 2 jobs for 1 salary. But I didn't mind the work. What bothered me were the small things that didn't fit, like the budget ledger that didn't balance even after the audit, or the purchase orders marked urgent with no signatures, or the way Renee stopped returning emails after 5 p.m. It felt like the company had built a new version of itself, shinier, faster, but with the same cracks under the paint. One Monday morning, I came in early and found a printed expense report waiting on my keyboard. No note, no sender, just a single page. At the bottom, vendor, LH Consulting LLC. Again, the date was recent, 2 weeks ago. I checked the database. No such vendor listed anymore. Someone was re-adding the ghost entry, running charges through short-term codes, and deleting them before end-of-day reconciliation. I looked around the empty cubicles. Whoever left that printout wanted me to see it. By 9 o'clock, I was in Renee's office. "Someone's rerouting old vendor codes about," I said, dropping the paper on her desk. She rubbed her temples. "We did a full purge last quarter." "Then how'd this one sneak back in?" She didn't answer right away. Her screen showed a half-written email draft to Executive Finance Council. Finally, she said, "Leave it with me, Evan. I'll escalate it quietly." Quietly. The word that got us here in the first place. That afternoon, I got a calendar invite titled Operations Review. Confidential. Sender. Executive Finance Council. Location, Conference B, 5th floor. Attendees, me, Renee, 2 people I'd never met. I walked in at 4 sharp. The air smelled like new carpet and burned coffee. The older man at the table introduced himself as Charles Grant, VP of Finance. His assistant, Hannah, took notes on a tablet without looking up. Grant gestured to the chair. "Mr. Miller, thank you for joining. We've heard quite a bit about you." "Good things, I hope." He smiled thinly. "Mostly." He flipped through a folder. "Seems you've been proactive in surfacing irregularities." "That's my job," I said. "Sometimes," he said, "initiative can look like interference." I held his gaze. "Depends on what you're trying to hide." The silence that followed stretched long enough for the air conditioner hum to turn into a heartbeat. Finally, he closed the folder. "We'll handle the matter internally. No further action needed from you." I nodded, stood, and walked out knowing that internally meant quietly. That evening, Renee called. "You shouldn't have pushed him like that," she said. "Shouldn't have. He's old school corporate. Keeps score." "So do I." She sighed. "Just watch your back." The line clicked dead before I could ask what she meant. 2 weeks passed. Then, out of nowhere, I was told my position was being reviewed for redundancy. HR phrased it like an apology. With ongoing restructuring, we're consolidating management layers. I stared at the HR rep, a woman I'd never seen before, and asked the only question that mattered. "Who authorized this?" "Mr. Grant," she said softly. Of course. They gave me a 3-month severance and a polite handshake. No one said thank you for cleaning up the mess. When I cleared my desk, Jake watched from across the aisle. "This about Tom?" he whispered. "Everything's about Tom," I said. I walked out with a single box. My mug, my notebook, and the USB drive Perez had given me with the audit files. That night, I opened the drive again. First time since the storm had ended. It still held every report, every signature, every receipt. One folder I hadn't noticed before caught my eye. Supplemental data, vendor pipeline. Inside were PDFs labeled with codes I didn't recognize. When I opened them, I froze. The signatures weren't Tom's. They were Charles Grant's. And the payment trail led straight to a holding account in Atlanta, the same one that once paid LH Consulting. It hit me like static under my skin. Tom wasn't the beginning of the rot. He was a symptom. I could have ignored it, walked away with my severance, started fresh somewhere else. But that file sitting open on my laptop looked too much like the first one I'd ignored months ago. So I started compiling again, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. I worked until dawn, cross-referencing purchase orders, building a map of how money moved through our company like water through cracks. By sunrise, I had a picture. Grant had rerouted at least $200,000 over 2 years, using dummy vendors, short-term consulting contracts, and ghost reimbursements. And Lena's LLC was still one of them. I didn't call Perez right away. I needed proof that couldn't vanish with a server wipe. The next day, I drove to the regional supplier's office listed on one of the invoices, a small warehouse on the edge of town. A man in a faded work shirt met me at the counter. Can I help you? I'm looking for someone named Hart, I said. Consultant, LH Consulting. He frowned. Never heard of her. We don't do consulting. He let me glance at his order log. Real handwritten sheets, yellowed at the edges. Not a single line matched the digital records. I snapped photos discreetly, thanked him, and left. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't over corporate politics anymore. It was fraud. And I was the only one still watching. That night, I drafted another email. To Daniel.Perez@corpcompliance.gov. Subject, new vendor evidence, escalation required. I attached the photos, the PDFs, and a single sentence. It goes higher than we thought. I hovered over send. Then I noticed something in the corner of my screen, a new notification. Incoming call. Renee Campos. I answered. Her voice was low, hurried. Evan, whatever you're about to do, stop. Too late, I said. Why? She hesitated. They know you have the files. Grant's been asking who gave you access. You're in danger of breaching confidentiality. Confidentiality? I laughed. They're laundering money, Renee. I'm serious, she said. Delete everything. Walk away. Can't, she sighed, almost breaking. Then at least don't use company Wi-Fi. The call ended. I clicked send. An hour later, the power went out. At first, I thought it was the storm outside. Then I saw a pair of headlights stop in front of my building. Two men in plain clothes stepped out, carrying black cases. Not cops, not delivery. They buzzed my door. I didn't answer. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket, grabbed my jacket, and went down the back stairs. Rain hit my face like nails. I ran through the alley, toward the gas station across the street, and waited behind the ice machine until the car drove off. Only then did I breathe. If they wanted silence, they'd picked the wrong man. I checked my phone. No service. The storm had knocked out towers. Fine. I'd go analog. Across the lot was a 24-hour copy shop. I ducked inside, soaked and shaking, and paid cash to print every file from the drive. The clerk didn't ask questions, just handed me a thick stack of papers warm from the printer. I put them in a plain envelope and wrote a single name on it, Perez. Then I mailed it overnight. The next morning, my phone lit up with missed calls. Unknown numbers, blocked IDs. I ignored them all. But one text came through from Perez. Got it, stay low. I'll handle the rest. No punctuation, no signature. That was a week ago. Since then, nothing. No news, no visits, no updates. I sit by my window most nights, watching the rain crawl down the glass, wondering if I pushed too far or not far enough. Somewhere, a man like Grant is sipping coffee in a meeting room, telling himself people like me don't last. Maybe he's right. But when the next audit comes and those numbers don't add up, he'll remember the quiet guy from logistics who wouldn't look away. The man on the line introduced himself as Special Agent Martin Rhodes, Financial Crimes Division. He said they'd received my package, the one Perez forwarded internally, and that it had been escalated for federal review. He thanked me for the thorough documentation and said they might need me to testify. Testify. I'd thought this would end with Tom, or at worst, Grant. But hearing that word made it real. The kind of real that doesn't stop when you close your laptop. Rhodes asked if I could meet him and a forensic accountant at a local field office that afternoon. I agreed before thinking twice. The office was nondescript. Beige walls, buzzing lights, coffee that tasted like cardboard. Rhodes met me in the lobby, tall, mid-40s, jacket a size too big. He had that calm patience of someone who'd seen every version of greed. He led me into a small room where a woman named Sarah Wu sat with a laptop. She gestured to the stack of printouts I'd brought. You really built a case file. I just like things neat, I said. Rhodes smiled faintly. Neat gets people arrested. They started walking me through their findings. My data cross-checked with internal records, offshore transfers, vendor shells. It all tied back to Grant. The Atlanta accounts were layered through 3 holding companies, all routed through contracts approved under his name. But here's the part that froze me. One of the co-signers wasn't Grant. It was Renee Campos. I remember sitting back, throat dry, staring at the screen. That's not possible, I said. Wu rotated the monitor toward me. We traced digital signatures, metadata, timestamps. She authorized wire releases when Grant was overseas. Same login pattern, same IP range. I thought of her late-night calls, the warnings, the silence after hours. Why would she risk that? I asked. Rhodes folded his hands. People rarely steal alone. Sometimes they just start cleaning up someone else's mess and forget where the line was. That night, I sat in my car outside the office for nearly an hour. The building lights flickered in rows like they always had, perfectly even, perfectly blind. Part of me wanted to walk in and confront her, demand an explanation. Another part of me remembered the look on her face the day she told me to stay quiet. I didn't go in. Instead, I drove to a 24-hour diner off the interstate, ordered burnt coffee, and stared at my reflection in the window. 8 years in that company. And somehow, I was still the only one who didn't know which side I was on. By the end of that week, federal investigators froze several accounts. Grant resigned for personal reasons. Renee took a sudden medical leave. HR called to clarify the circumstances of my departure, whether I'd like to return under new management. I told them I'd think about it. But what was there to think about? The place was rotting from the inside, and I'd already played the part of cleanup crew once. I told them no. Then the media leak hit. A small business news outlet ran a headline, "Construction Executive Under Investigation for Financial Misconduct." The article was vague, but insiders could connect the dots. I kept my name out of it, but somehow my phone started buzzing with blocked calls again. Late that night, an email appeared in my inbox. No subject, no signature, just one line. You're next. I reported it to Rhodes the next morning. He didn't flinch. They're rattled, he said. Means the wall's cracking. Still, I started checking my locks twice. Neighbors noticed a sedan idling near the lot for 3 nights straight. When I mentioned it, Rhodes arranged for temporary protection. A car on rotation parked down the block. Just precaution, he said. Precaution. That's what they always say before something breaks. Weeks passed. Investigations moved slow. Slower than guilt. Slower than fear. I tried to rebuild routine. Gym in the mornings, freelance consulting work in the afternoons, quiet evenings with the TV on low. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. Emails bounced. My home. Internet slowed to a crawl. One night, my router log showed multiple failed remote access attempts. It wasn't paranoia. I'd learned to trust patterns. Then, one Tuesday, I came home to find an envelope taped to my door again. Same neat handwriting. Inside, a photo. It was me, sitting at the diner, reflection in the window, same night I'd been there alone. No message, just the timestamp, 02:14 a.m. The next morning, Rhodes called. We need to talk, he said. I met him at the field office again. He looked older, more tired. Campos is cooperating, he said. Grant isn't. He slid a transcript across the table. A partial statement. Renee had confessed to processing the payments under Grant's orders, but she claimed she didn't know where the money went. She says Grant kept a shadow file, Sipta, Rhodes said. A backup ledger that ties everything together. Where? He looked at me. We think you know. I blinked. Why would I know that? Because he mentioned you by name in one of the recorded calls. What? Grant said, and I quote, "The quiet guy has it. He always keeps receipts." I didn't breathe for a moment. Then I realized what he meant. The audit USB, the drive Perez had given me. It wasn't just evidence, it was the ledger. Rhodes leaned forward. "We need that drive, Evan." "It's not with me," I said. "Where is it?" "Safe." He waited. "We can protect you, but only if you cooperate fully." I looked at him and saw the truth behind the practiced calm. Even he didn't know how deep this went. That night, I retrieved the drive from its hiding spot, inside an old tool bag in my storage unit. The metal casing felt colder than I remembered. When I plugged it into my laptop, a new folder had appeared since the last time I checked. Q4 La Reserve Grant. Inside, encrypted spreadsheets, transaction logs, voice memos, all tagged with timestamps from the weeks leading up to his resignation. One file was audio only, labeled meetingatlanta.wave. I hit play. Static, then voices. Tom Beckett's first. "It's handled. Campos knows the process." Grant's voice replied, "What about Miller?" Tom, "He won't talk. He's too careful." Grant, "Everyone talks when the numbers bleed." I sat there frozen, the room humming with the sound of my own pulse. They'd known I was watching them months before the first audit. I wasn't invisible to them. I was bait. The next day, I gave Rhodes the drive. All of it. He nodded, grim. "This'll take them down." "Will it stop them?" I asked. He didn't answer. The case dragged on for months. Testimonies, hearings, closed-door settlements. Grant got indicted on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Campos turned state's witness. Tom disappeared overseas. My name appeared in one footnote of the case summary. Anonymous internal source. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, all I felt was tired. One night, months later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Evan," a woman's voice said quietly. I knew it instantly. "Renee." "You shouldn't be calling me," I said. "I had to. They're still moving money. Different accounts. Same pattern. You stopped them here, but not everywhere." My throat tightened. "Why tell me?" "Because," she said, "you're the only one who still keeps receipts." The line went dead. That night, I opened my laptop again. New spreadsheets, new folders. I don't know if I'm fixing anything anymore. But someone has to watch. Someone always has to keep the ledger. It's been nearly a year since that first audit. A year since I hit forward on that email that started all of this. Most days, I still wake up before dawn. Habit, not insomnia. I sit by the window with my coffee and watch the delivery trucks roll past the street outside my apartment. The rhythm of logistics never really leaves your bones. Schedules, routes, receipts, they're all just different languages for truth. Sometimes I think that's why I noticed the fraud before anyone else. Because I believe numbers don't lie. People do. After the indictments, life split into two versions of itself. There was the public one, where the company released statements about restructuring and integrity renewal. They launched new compliance programs, hired consultants, held press events. I even saw a billboard downtown, "Building a better tomorrow, one honest brick at a time." The irony could have cracked concrete. Then there was the quiet version, the one where I still got late-night calls from blocked numbers, where emails from unknown senders hit my inbox with attachments I didn't open, and where every creak in the hallway sounded like someone deciding I'd said too much. I'd been freelancing ever since. Smaller contracts, mostly with independent construction firms that wanted someone to keep the books straight. Sometimes they'd heard of me through whispers. The guy who caught his boss. Some said it with admiration, others with a kind of cautious distance, like I carried bad luck in my briefcase. It didn't matter. I was making enough to get by, enough to stay busy, but I couldn't stop following the threads. One afternoon, I got a letter. Not email, a real letter, folded, sealed, postmarked from Atlanta. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed from what looked like an accounting database. A balance sheet for a company I didn't recognize, North Meridian Holdings. At the bottom, in smaller text, a note handwritten in blue ink. Same routing number, different name. No signature, but I knew who had written it. Renee. I debated calling Rhodes. He'd told me after the trial to step back, said the Bureau had enough to handle. But if what she'd sent me was true, Grant's network wasn't gone. It had just been reborn under another corporate shell. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the decision made itself. I packed a small bag, laptop, external drive, power bank, the lockbox with the USB. I booked a one-way ticket to Atlanta. The city hadn't changed much since I'd last been there for a vendor conference years ago. Same skyline, same traffic that made you question free will. I checked into a cheap hotel near the airport and started tracing the address listed on the letterhead. North Meridian Holdings, Suite 703, Peachtree Tower. It wasn't a construction firm. It wasn't even a supplier. It was an investment management consultancy, a shell built to hide money. I spent the next 2 days cross-referencing. Corporate filings, payment transfers, EIN records, all public if you knew where to look. The same patterns emerged. Same accounting firm, same timestamps, same signature blocks, different names. By the third night, I was ready to walk away again. Maybe I'd done enough. Maybe I wasn't supposed to keep digging. Then my hotel room phone rang. Not my cell, the room phone. Mr. Miller? The voice was female, clipped, unfamiliar. You should stop looking at the tower. Click. The next morning, the front desk said no one had called from outside lines. I packed my things and checked out, leaving through a service exit. But the more I tried to let it go, the more I realized I was caught in the same pattern again. The same quiet arithmetic of corruption. Every number I traced led back to someone who thought no one would ever connect the dots. I sent one email before I left Atlanta. To daniel.perez@corpcompliance.gov. Subject, it's starting again. I attached Renee's letter and the corporate filings I'd found. He replied 2 hours later. Under review, stay unreachable for a while. That's all he wrote. It's funny. People think justice is loud. Courtrooms, headlines, verdicts. But in truth, justice sounds like a paper sliding through a scanner, a line item on a spreadsheet finally balanced, a quiet acknowledgement that someone, somewhere, noticed. Sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is keep records. Last week, I got another package. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. I plugged it in. Carefully, offline. Inside, one video file. Renee, recorded in a dimly lit room. She looked thinner, tired, but her voice was steady. If you're seeing this, they found me. Don't trust the new board. The money's moving through real estate contracts now. Same routing, same people. You can stop them again. You always did. She hesitated, then added softer. Just don't let them erase me. Then the video cut to static. I sat there for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Outside, the streetlight flickered against the rain. I should have felt afraid. But all I felt was something colder, steadier, resolve. They could replace names, rewrite ledgers, delete emails, but they couldn't unwrite what I'd seen. And somewhere out there, Renee's warning was proof that people were still fighting, even if no one else knew their names. The next morning, I printed new files, started a new folder. Label, North Meridian, Q1 Patterns. Because this story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about record keeping, about refusing to let truth vanish in the margins, about staying the quiet guy, the one who doesn't need the spotlight, just the proof. I don't know where this ends. Maybe it never does. Maybe it's just a cycle of exposure and silence, a ledger that keeps rewriting itself until someone finally burns the last page. But as long as I'm here, I'll keep watching the numbers. And when the next email comes, the next adjustment, the next vendor discrepancy, I'll be ready. Because justice doesn't fade when the headlines do. It just changes departments. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.